Emily Carter stared into the mirror and wiped the lipstick clean off her own mouth. She raked her fingers through her hair until it tangled, pulled on the ugliest sweater she owned, and whispered, "Let him hate me." She wasn't dressing up for this blind date, she was dressing to be rejected. Because a beautiful woman gets hurt. A plain one gets left alone, and being left alone was the only safety Emily had left. But the widowed father waiting across that coffee shop took one look at her and felt something he hadn't felt in 4 years. Before this story ends, one buried truth will nearly destroy them both. Comment the city you're watching from so I can see how far this story has traveled, and subscribe to follow it all the way to the end. The first thing Emily Carter did that morning was throw the good dress in the trash. It was navy blue, the one her sister had begged her to wear, the one that still had the tags on it, because Emily hadn't worn a single nice thing in 11 months. She held it over the kitchen garbage can for a long moment, and then she let go, and it dropped onto the coffee grounds and the empty yogurt cup, and she felt nothing. That was the part that scared her. She felt nothing at all. "You're going to wear that?" her sister Rachel said over the phone 20 minutes later when Emily described what she'd put on instead. "I'm going to wear this." "Emily, the gray one with the bleach stain." "It doesn't have a bleach stain, it has character." "It has a bleach stain, honey, right on the shoulder, I've seen it." "Then he'll see it too, and he'll know exactly what he's getting." There was a silence on the line, the kind of silence Rachel had perfected over the last year. The silence that said, "I love you, and I'm worried about you, and I don't know how to say either one anymore." Then she said very quietly, "What are you doing, Em?" "I'm protecting myself." "By going to a date looking like you lost a fight with a dryer. By going to a date looking like the truth." Emily switched the phone to her other ear and started scrubbing a clean glass that didn't need to be cleaned because her hands needed something to do. If I show up looking nice, he expects something. He expects a person who has her life together. And then he finds out I'm 40 grand in debt because the man I was going to marry stole my name, my savings, and my credit and walked off into the sunset with another woman's checkbook. And then he leaves. So I'm just going to skip to the part where he leaves. I'll save us both the trouble. That's not Emily. That's not how this works. It's exactly how this works. You don't know that. "I know it better than I know my own birthday," Emily said. "I'm 38 years old, Rachel. I have learned exactly one thing for sure in this life, and it's that the moment somebody decides you're worth something, that's the moment they start figuring out how to take it." Rachel didn't argue. She couldn't not really, because she'd been there in the lawyer's office. She'd been there the night Emily found the second account. She'd been there when Emily sat on the bathroom floor with her back against the tub and didn't cry, just stared at the wall because some kinds of pain go past crying and come out the other side flat and gray and quiet. "Just," Rachel finally said, "just be there, that's all. You don't have to make it work. Just be in the room." "I'll be in the room," Emily said. "I just won't be in the room for long." She hung up before her sister could say anything else. The coffee shop was called Birchwood, a corner place with mismatched chairs and a chalkboard menu, and the smell of something cinnamon coming off the back counter. Emily got there 9 minutes early on purpose because she wanted to choose the seat, and the seat she wanted was the one near the door, the one she could leave from fast. She ordered a small black coffee she had no intention of finishing, sat down with her back almost to the room, pulled out her phone and stared at it without reading a thing. 20 minutes, she told herself. Give it 20 minutes, and then say you have a headache and go home and never do this again. This had been Rachel's idea, the whole blind date thing. Rachel had a coworker. The coworker had a friend. The friend knew a man, and somehow Emily's number had gotten passed down a chain of well-meaning people who all believed with the bottomless optimism of the not recently destroyed that what Emily needed was to meet someone. What Emily needed was $40,000 and a time machine. But she'd said yes because saying no required a conversation, and a conversation required energy, and energy was the one thing she had run completely out of. Saying yes was easier. Saying yes and then showing up looking like roadkill, that was the plan. Let him take one look, decide she wasn't worth the price of a second coffee, and go home. Rejection. She could survive. Rejection she was an expert in. It was hope that killed you. Hope was the trap. Hope was the thing that made you write your name next to somebody else's on a piece of paper and trust that they'd keep their half. The bell over the door rang. Emily didn't look up. She'd learned that too. Don't look up. Don't seem eager. Make them come to you. A man's voice said something to the barista, low and even, and then footsteps came across the wooden floor, slow, unhurried, and stopped at the edge of her table. Emily. She looked up. Darius Cole was not what she'd pictured, and she was annoyed at herself for having pictured anything. He was tall, broad, through the shoulders, dressed in a plain dark jacket and a collared shirt without a tie. The kind of man who looked like he'd decided a long time ago that he didn't need to prove anything to anybody. He had a closely trimmed beard going gray at the edges, and tired, careful eyes, the eyes of a man who'd been awake at 3 a.m. more nights than he'd admit. He didn't smile right away. He just looked at her, and Emily braced for it, braced for the flicker, the little involuntary downturn at the corners of the mouth, the recalculation that men did when the woman in front of them didn't match the woman they'd hoped for. It didn't come. He looked at her sweater with the stain on the shoulder, and her tangled hair, and her bare washed face, and her coffee. She wasn't drinking, and something in his expression, Emily would think about this for a long time afterward. Something in his expression softened instead of hardened. "You're Emily," he said again. Not a question this time. "Last I checked." She gestured at the chair across from her flat, almost daring him. "You're Darius." "I am." He sat down. He moved carefully like a big man in a small chair always does. And he set his own coffee on the table between them, and he didn't say any of the things she expected. He didn't say you look nice. He didn't lie. He just folded his hands and looked at her with those tired, careful eyes and said, "You don't want to be here." Emily blinked. It was so direct that it knocked her plan sideways for a second. She'd rehearsed for charm, for compliments, for the smooth, practiced patter of a man on the hunt. She had not rehearsed for this. "Excuse me. You don't want to be here," Darius said again, mild as anything. "It's all right. I almost didn't come either." "Then why did you?" "Because a friend of mine wouldn't stop calling about it," he said. "You, my sister." Emily heard herself answer before she'd decided to. "She thinks I need to, quote, get back out there." Darius nodded slowly, like that was the most reasonable, horrible thing he'd ever heard. "And out there is here." "Out there is here," Emily agreed. For a second, neither of them said anything. And here was where it should have ended. Here was the natural off-ramp. Well, this was nice. Take care. Emily even opened her mouth to start it. "I think maybe this was a mistake. I have and then Darius did something she didn't expect." He laughed. It wasn't a big laugh. It was quiet almost to himself, and a little rusty, like a door that hadn't been opened in a while. "You wore that on purpose," he said. Emily went still. "What?" "The sweater." He nodded at the stain. "The hair. You did all that on purpose." He wasn't being cruel about it. He said it the way you'd point out the weather. "You wanted me to take one look and leave." Her face went hot, caught. She felt the old urge to deny it, to deflect, to put up the wall, and then with a kind of exhausted honesty that surprised her, she didn't. "Yeah," she said. "I did." "Why?" "Because it's easier when they leave first." She hadn't planned to say that. It just came out, the truest thing she'd said to a stranger in a year, and it sat there on the table between them next to the 2 cups of coffee, and Darius didn't flinch from it. He didn't get up. He didn't reach for the cheap reassurance. "Oh, I'm sure that's not true." The thing people said when they wanted the heavy thing to go back in the box. Instead, he leaned back in his too small chair and said, "Huh. Huh, what?" "I was going to do the same thing," he said. "Different version of it. I had a whole plan. 20 minutes polite, no second date. I even told my—" He stopped, started again. "I had it all worked out. Come in, be a gentleman. Get out, tell my friend I tried. And then I walked in and saw a woman who clearly wanted to be anywhere else on earth, dressed like she was hiding from the world, and I thought... He shrugged. I thought, well, there's somebody who's not going to lie to me. Emily stared at him. That's the thing I can't do anymore. Darius went on, turning his cup slowly with 2 fingers. Be lied to. Be charmed. Sit across from somebody who's performing the best version of themselves for an hour. I've had about all of that I can take. So you sitting there looking like you'd rather be at the dentist, that's the most honest thing anybody's offered me in a long time. It's not a compliment. No, he agreed. It's not, but it's real. And lately I'll take real over a compliment any day of the week. Emily looked down at her coffee. The wall she'd built that morning, the careful, deliberate ugliness, the rehearsed exit, the whole strategy of being rejected first, it was supposed to work like a moat. Keep him out. Keep her safe. And instead, this man had walked across it like it wasn't even there. And worse, he'd seen it, named it, and respected it. She didn't know what to do with that. She'd built her whole defense around the assumption that the truth would repel people. And here was somebody the truth had pulled in closer. You don't have to stay, she said. It came out smaller than she meant it to. I know I don't. I mean it. I'm not good company. I'm not... She laughed and it came out bitter. I'm a mess. I'm a financial disaster. I'm in debt I didn't make. I'm losing sleep over a man who's probably on a beach somewhere with my money, and I haven't been a real person in about a year. So if you're looking for... I'm not looking for anything, Darius said. Everybody's looking for something. No. He said it firmly, and for the first time there was something underneath the calm, some old grief that moved across his face and was gone. Some of us stopped looking a long time ago. Some of us just learned how to keep the lights on, and the day running, and the... He stopped again. He had a way of stopping right at the edge of something she noticed pulling up short like a man stepping back from a curb. Some of us are just trying to get through it, he finished. I'm not looking for a wife, Emily. I'm not looking to be fixed. I came here to do a favor for a friend and go home, same as you. Then why are you still sitting down? The question hung there. It was a real question. She wanted to know. Darius looked at her for a long moment, and then he said very simply, because you're the first person in a long time who didn't make me tired in the first 5 minutes. Emily didn't have an answer for that, so she did the only thing left to do. She picked up her coffee, the coffee she'd had no intention of drinking, and she took a sip. It was lukewarm and too bitter and exactly right. And across the table, Darius watched her do it, and the corner of his mouth moved, and he picked up his own. Okay, she said. Okay, he said. And that, though neither of them knew, it was the moment the whole thing started. Yeah, it went sideways from the script after that in the best possible way. So, Emily said, because somebody had to say something. Rachel told me she said you have a kid. The change in him was immediate and unmistakable. Everything in his face that had been guarded and careful and tired came open just for a second like a window catching light. A daughter, he said. Maya, she's 7. 7's a good age. 7's a terrible age, Darius said, and the way he said it, the warmth packed into the complaint made Emily almost smile. 7 knows everything. 7 has opinions. 7 told me last week that my cooking is, and I'm quoting her directly, fine but not exciting. Brutal. She's not wrong is the worst part. He shook his head. She runs the house. I just live there and pay for things. And her mom? She regretted it the second she said it, saw the question land, saw something pulled tight across his jaw. But she'd never been good at the soft, careful conversational dance, and tonight she was too tired to pretend. Darius looked down at his hands. Her mom passed, he said. 4 years ago. Maya was 3. He turned his cup again, that slow quarter turn. Cancer. It was fast, which everybody tells you is a mercy, and maybe it is. But it sure doesn't feel like mercy when you're standing in a hospital hallway trying to figure out how you're going to raise a 3-year-old by yourself. I'm sorry, Emily said, and meant it and hated how small the words were. Don't be sorry, you didn't do it. He said it gently. Everybody's sorry. I've had 4 years of sorry. I'd take one person who didn't say sorry over 100 who did. Then I'm not sorry. He looked up at her. I'm just... She searched for it. I'm just sitting here with you. While it's true, that's all I've got. Something passed between them, then fast and wordless, and Emily felt the strangest thing, felt the floor of the conversation drop out from under the small talk, felt them both fall through into something deeper and quieter and a great deal more dangerous. Because this was exactly what she'd come here to avoid. This the recognition. The I see you and you see me. This was the trap door. This was hope. She'd dressed ugly, precisely so this wouldn't happen, and it was happening anyway. I haven't dated since, Darius said. Since Maya's mom. 4 years. This is the first one. Tonight. You're kidding. I wish I was. My friend, the one who wouldn't stop calling, she's been trying to push me out the door for 2 years, and I keep telling her no. Because what's the point? I've got a job that eats half my life, and a 7-year-old who eats the other half, and the idea of sitting across from a stranger and trying to be charming and interesting and available. He made a face. I'd rather have a root canal. You said that about your daughter's opinion of your cooking too. You've got a thing about root canals. I've got a thing about pain I can see coming, he said. I'll take a surprise over a thing I have to walk toward. You understand that? I understand that better than anything anybody's said to me all year, Emily said. And she did. God help her, she did. They were two people who'd learned the same lesson from two completely different disasters, that the things you walk toward with your eyes open are the things that hurt the most, because you let them, because you chose them, because you opened the door. His wife, her fiancé. Both of them had walked eyes open into the thing that broke them, and both of them had spent the years since building the same defensive architecture out of completely different materials. His was duty and exhaustion. Hers was self-sabotage and a sweater with a stain on it. But the blueprint was identical. Can I ask you something? Darius said. You can ask. I might not answer. Fair. He nodded. The debt. You said somebody took your money. Emily's stomach tightened the old reflex. Don't tell him. Don't put it on the table. The minute you tell a man you're broke, you've handed him the reason to leave. But Darius wasn't looking at her like a man calculating a risk. He was looking at her the way you look at someone you've decided not to lie to. So she told him. His name was Brian, she said. We were engaged, 2 years. Everybody loved him. My mother loved him. My friends loved him. He was charming and he was warm, and he made you feel like you were the only person in the room. And the whole time, the entire time he was... She stopped, took a breath, kept going. He opened credit cards in my name. He drained the joint savings we'd set up for the wedding for a down payment on a house. He forged my signature on a loan. By the time I figured out something was wrong, he'd taken about $40,000 and disappeared and left me holding all of it, every cent, in my name. My credit's destroyed. I'm paying off debt I never spent for a future that never happened with a man I'll probably never see again. She said it all in one flat, steady stream, the way you can only say a thing after you've said it to enough lawyers and enough collection agencies that it's lost the power to make you cry. And then she waited. She waited for the recalculation. She waited for the careful retreat. The wow, that's a lot, that's heavy, the look at the watch. Darius didn't move. He sat there and listened to all of it, every word, and when she was done, he was quiet for a moment, and then he said, He didn't just take your money. Emily looked at him. That's what people miss, Darius said. Everybody hears the number, 40 grand. They hear the number and they think that's the wound. But that's not the wound. The wound is, he made you doubt your own judgment. You trusted him, and you were right to trust him by every signal a normal person reads, and he turned out to be a thief. So now you can't trust your own read on people anymore. He didn't just take $40,000. He took your ability to believe what your own gut tells you. That's the real theft. The money's just the part you can put a number on. Emily sat very still, because that was it. That was the exact thing. That was the thing she hadn't been able to explain to Rachel, or to her mother, or to the well-meaning therapist she'd seen twice and stopped seeing because she couldn't afford it. The thing that had made her wipe the lipstick off her own mouth that morning. It wasn't the money. She could pay off money eventually, $150 at a time. It was that she'd looked a man in the eye for 2 years and seen love and been wrong. It was that her own eyes had lied to her. So now, when a kind, careful, tired man sat across a coffee shop table and looked at her like she mattered every instinct she had, screamed that she couldn't trust it because she'd been so sure last time, and last time she'd been so wrong. "How did you—" Her voice caught. She cleared it. "How did you know that—" "Because I've got my own version of it," Darius said. "Different shape, same hole." He turned the cup. "When my wife got sick, I told myself I could handle it. I told myself if I just worked hard enough, planned carefully enough, stayed strong enough, I could hold the whole thing together. And then she died anyway. And I learned the thing you don't ever come back from, which is that you can do everything right and still lose. So now—" He spread his hands. "Now I don't trust good things, same as you don't trust your own gut. A good thing shows up in my life, and the first thing I do is wait for it to be taken away. That's not a way to live. But it's the only way I've got." "So we're both just walking around with a hole in us," Darius said. "Yeah, pretty much." And then, impossibly, Emily laughed. It surprised her as much as it surprised him. It came up out of her chest before she could stop it. A real laugh, the first one in longer than she could remember, and it had something dark and exhausted and relieved in it. "God listened to us," she said. "This is the worst date in the history of dates. 2 people comparing scars over cold coffee." "It's the best date I've been on in 4 years, Darius said. "It's the only date you've been on in 4 years. Still counts." He was smiling now, really smiling, and it changed his whole face. "And for the record, you can stop now." "Stop what?" "The thing with the sweater, the hair, the whole 'please reject me' costume." He nodded at her not unkindly. "It's not working. You can put it down. I already saw you." Emily's throat went tight in a way she absolutely had not authorized. "That's the trick," she said, and her voice wasn't quite steady. "That's the whole trick of it. If you let someone see you, then they have something to leave. Or," Darius said, "they have something to stay for. You ever think about it from that direction?" "No," Emily said honestly. "I stopped letting myself think about it from that direction about a year ago." "Maybe try it once," he said. "Just as an experiment. You don't have to commit to anything. Just sit here, drink your terrible coffee, talk to a stranger who isn't going to lie to you, and see what it feels like to not run for 1 hour. And if it feels terrible, then you go home and you never call me again and we both go back to our holes," Darius said. "But if it doesn't feel terrible—" He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. It sat there, the unfinished thing, the dangerous open door, and Emily looked at it the way she'd been looking at open doors all year, like they were traps, because every open door she'd walked through lately had a man on the other side waiting to take something from her. But this one didn't feel like that. That was the problem. That was the thing that scared her more than anything Brian had ever done. This door didn't feel like a trap. It felt like a window catching light. "You're a dangerous man, Darius Cole," she said. "I get told that a lot less than you'd think," he said. "Mostly I get told I'm a tired man who needs to smile more." "Who tells you that?" "My daughter, my mother, that pull up short again, that step back from the curb. People at work." "Where do you work?" And there, though Emily didn't notice it, though it slid right past her in the warmth of the moment, there was the smallest hesitation, the smallest crack in all that easy honesty. Darius looked down at his cup and turned it that slow quarter turn and said, "I do corporate stuff. Management. It's boring. You don't want to hear about it. Try me. I used to do bookkeeping. I love boring." "It's logistics," he said. "Operations. Moving things from one place to another and making sure the numbers add up." Which was true. Which was all true, every word of it. It just wasn't the whole truth. And the whole truth, the corner office, the title on the door, The size of the company he didn't run so much as. Was that part? He left in his pocket, the way you leave your keys in your pocket automatically without deciding to. Because Darius Cole had his own scar tissue and his own carefully built wall, and his wall was made of exactly this, the habit of not telling people what he was worth until he was sure they wanted him and not it. He'd been wanted for it before. He'd been charmed by women who'd done their homework, who knew his title before they knew his daughter's name. And so, somewhere along the way, he'd developed a quiet automatic reflex to be plain, to be operations and logistics, to be a regular tired single dad in a coffee shop, until he knew. Just until he knew. It was a small thing. A nothing thing in the moment. It would not stay a small thing. Boring, Emily said, and nodded and let it go. See, now you sound trustworthy. Nobody interesting is honest about being boring. That a rule? It's a rule. I just made it. But it's a good one. I'll write it down, Darius said. They talked. They talked past the 20 minutes Emily had budgeted, past the headache she'd planned to invent, past the hour into the long golden slack of an afternoon that neither of them had expected to enjoy. She told him about her mother, who called every day to ask if she was eating. He told her about Maya, who refused to sleep without exactly 3 stuffed animals arranged in exactly one order and would wake him at 2 in the morning to fix it if a rabbit ended up where a bear was supposed to be. Emily told him about the bookkeeping job she'd lost when she'd had to take 3 months off to deal with the fraud, and the new one she'd just started that didn't pay as much but had a boss who didn't ask questions. Darius told her about the 4 years of learning to braid hair from videos on the internet badly, and the parent-teacher conferences he sat through trying to be both parents at once, and the particular loneliness of a house that goes quiet at 8:30 every night after a small person finally falls asleep. And the whole time underneath the words, the same current ran between them. You're not lying to me, and I'm not lying to you, and do you have any idea how rare that is? Can I tell you something stupid? Emily said, when the light through the windows had started to go orange. Always. I almost didn't come in. I sat in my car for 10 minutes in the parking lot. She turned her own cup now she noticed the way he did. She must have picked it up from him. I had my hand on the keys. I was going to text Rachel and say I had a flat tire. I had the lie all typed out. What stopped you? I don't know, Emily said. I really don't. I think I was just too tired to run, for once. I didn't have the energy to even run away properly. She laughed at herself. How's that for romance? I'm only here because I was too exhausted to leave. Best reason I've ever heard, Darius said. You keep saying that. I keep meaning it. He looked at her, and the tiredness in his eyes had eased, and underneath it was something Emily hadn't seen aimed at her in a very long time. Something that had nothing to do with what she was worth on paper, and everything to do with the woman sitting across from him in a stained gray sweater, with her face washed clean and her hair a mess, and her whole sad true story laid out on the table. Emily, I want to ask you something, and I want you to know before I ask it, that no is a perfectly good answer, and it won't change anything that happened here today. Her heart did something complicated. Okay. I'd like to see you again. There it was, the open door. The thing she'd dressed ugly to avoid, the thing she'd sat in her car for 10 minutes to escape, the thing every instinct she had, instincts a thief had taught her not to trust, was screaming at her to refuse. Why? She said. And don't say because I didn't make you tired. Give me the real one. Darius thought about it. He didn't rush. That was a thing she'd already learned about him in 3 hours. He didn't rush a real question. Because for 3 hours, he said, I forgot to wait for the bad thing to happen. I've been waiting for the bad thing for 4 years. Every good moment, there's a part of me standing off to the side with its arms crossed, waiting for it to get taken away. And for 3 hours, sitting here with you, that part of me went quiet. And I don't know if that's love or relief or just being seen by somebody who's as worn out as I am. I don't know what it is. But I know I haven't felt it in 4 years. And I know I'd be a fool to walk away from the first thing in 4 years that made that part of me shut up. He paused. That real enough? Emily looked at him, and inside her 2 things were at war, and they were both very loud. One was the thing the last year had built: the wall, the moat, the stained sweater, the rehearsed exit, the whole hard-won wisdom that said, the moment you matter to someone is the moment they start figuring out how to take you for everything you've got. That voice was screaming at her to say no, to get up, to go home, to be safe, to be alone. Because alone had never stolen $40,000 from her. Alone had never forged her signature. Alone had never made her doubt her own eyes. And the other thing was quieter. The other thing was just 3 hours old. It was the memory of a laugh that had come up out of her chest before she could stop it. It was a man who'd looked at the worst, ugliest, most defended version of her, and softened instead of hardened. It was the strange and terrifying possibility that maybe the thing she'd been protecting herself from wasn't out there in the world at all. Maybe it had been inside her the whole time, telling her she wasn't worth staying for, dressing her up in stains and tangles every morning so nobody would get close enough to prove it wrong. You should know, she heard herself say, that I'm going to be difficult. I'm going to push you away. I'm going to find reasons. I'm going to wake up tomorrow and decide this was a mistake, and I'm going to try to call it off. That's just what I do now. That's the shape I'm in. Okay, Darius said. That doesn't scare you, Emily. I've got a 7-year-old who once didn't speak to me for a day and a half because I cut her sandwich into squares instead of triangles, he said. I am extremely familiar with people pushing me away over things that aren't really about me. I can handle difficult. The question isn't whether you'll be difficult. The question is whether under all the difficult, there's somebody who actually wants this. Because I'm not going to chase somebody who doesn't. I did my chasing. I'm done chasing. But I'll wait. There's a difference. I'll wait if it's worth waiting for. And how do you know if it's worth waiting for? I don't, he said. That's the whole terrible thing, isn't it? You never know. You just decide. You look at the person in front of you and you decide they're worth the risk with your eyes wide open, knowing it could all go wrong, and then you find out if you were right. He shrugged, and there was 4 years of grief in the shrug, and 4 years of getting up at 6 a.m. anyway. That's all love ever is, near as I can tell. It's not a feeling. It's a decision you make every morning, even on the mornings the feeling isn't there. I made it for Maya's mother. I made it for Maya. I haven't made it for anybody new since. But I'd think about making it for you, if you'd let me find out. The coffee shop had mostly emptied out. The light had gone from gold to gray. Somewhere behind the counter, the barista was stacking chairs, the universal signal that the world was about to ask them to leave the little bubble they'd built and go back out into their separate, complicated, scarred-up lives. Emily Carter looked at the man across the table, the widowed father, the tired, careful eyes, the man who'd walked across her moat like it wasn't there, and seen her, actually seen her, and decided to stay anyway. And she felt the wall she'd spent a year building start to crack, and she was terrified. And she was something else too. Something she didn't have a name for yet. Something she'd dressed ugly that very morning specifically to avoid feeling. She thought about Brian. She thought about her own eyes lying to her. She thought about the bathroom floor and the flat gray quiet on the other side of crying. She thought about every reason she had to say no, and she had so many, she had a whole year's worth. And then she thought about the laugh. Yes, she said. It came out barely above a whisper, and it cost her more than anything had cost her in a year. And the second it was out of her mouth, she felt the old fear surge up. What did you just do? What did you just open? You know how this ends. You've seen how this ends. But Darius Cole smiled at her, that rusty, real door opening, after a long-time smile, and for one more minute, the part of her that was always waiting for the bad thing to happen went quiet too. What neither of them knew, sitting there in the emptying coffee shop, with their cold cups and their cracked open walls and their fragile, terrified 3-hour-old yes, was that the bad thing wasn't out there in the future, waiting to be walked toward. It was already at the table. It was sitting in Darius Cole's pocket, plain and quiet, as a set of keys in the one true thing he'd left out. She tried to call it off the very next morning exactly like she'd promised. Emily woke up at 6:15 with the fear already running. The way it ran most mornings, except this morning, it had something specific to chew on. She'd said yes. She'd actually said yes to a man out loud with witnesses, or at least with a barista stacking chairs. She lay in bed and stared at the ceiling and let the panic build, and by 6:30 she had her phone in her hand and the text half written. "Hey Darius, I had a really nice time yesterday, but I don't think I'm in a place where I can—" She stared at it. Her thumb hovered over the rest. And then, because she was a coward in exactly one specific way, she could end things in writing, but she couldn't bear to do it to a person's face. She made herself imagine sending it. Imagined him reading it. Imagined the tired, careful eyes going flat, the way they must have gone flat 100 times in 4 years when good things got taken away. Imagined being one more good thing that got taken away from a man who was already standing off to the side with his arms crossed waiting for it. She deleted the text. Then she wrote it again. She deleted it again. By 7, she'd written and deleted it 4 times, and her coffee had gone cold, and she was furious at herself, and the phone buzzed in her hand, and she nearly dropped it. It was him. "Morning. You said you'd wake up today and try to call it off. Figured I'd save you the trouble of finding my number. So here it is. Call it off if you need to. No hard feelings, no chasing. But I had the best afternoon I've had in 4 years, and I'd be a liar if I didn't tell you that. Your move." Emily read it 3 times. He'd remembered. She'd told him in so many words, "I'm going to wake up tomorrow and decide this was a mistake, and try to call it off." And instead of being wounded by it, instead of waiting around to be hurt, he'd just named it, handed it back to her, taken away its power by saying it first. It was the single most disarming thing anyone had done to her in a year, and she sat on the edge of her bed with her cold coffee and her 4 deleted texts, and she started against every instinct she had to laugh. She typed back, "That's a dirty trick. It's not a trick. It's just paying attention. You're making it very hard to run away from you." "Good," he wrote. "Then it's working." She set the phone down, picked it up, set it down again. And then, before the fear could finish reloading, she typed the most dangerous 4 words she'd typed in a year. "Are you free Saturday?" The 3 dots appeared and disappeared, and appeared again, and she realized she was holding her breath like a teenager, like a woman who hadn't been gutted, like a person who still had something to lose, and she hated it, and she didn't stop it. "I'm free. Saturday," Darius wrote. "I know a bookstore, the kind with creaky floors and a cat. You strike me as a creaky floors and a cat kind of woman. I have no idea what kind of woman I am anymore." She typed, and then deleted it because it was too true, and wrote instead, "The cat better be friendly. The cat is a menace. You'll love him." And that was how it started. Not with fireworks, not with a grand romantic gesture, but with a man who refused to let her run, and a woman who, for reasons she couldn't explain to her own sister, kept choosing not to. "You're seeing him again," Rachel said on the phone Friday night, and the disbelief in her voice was almost insulting. "The blind date? The one you dressed like a hostage for?" "I didn't dress like a hostage." "You wore the bleach sweater, Emily. The bleach sweater is a cry for help. And he asked you out again." "He did." "After the sweater." "Because of the sweater, kind of. It's a long story." "I have time. I have so much time. Tell me the entire thing." So Emily told her some of it, the parts she could put into words, the way he'd named the thing she was doing, instead of being repelled by it, the way he'd talked about his daughter, the way he'd understood about Brian, without her having to spell out the worst of it. And Rachel was quiet for a long time, longer than usual, and then she said in a different voice, "Em, that's the first time you've sounded like yourself in a year." "Don't. I'm just saying. Don't make it a thing, Rachel. The second you make it a thing, I'll find a reason to blow it up. You know I will. So let's just let it be a bookstore, with a cat. That's all it is, a bookstore and a menace cat." "Okay," Rachel said, but Emily could hear her smiling, and she hung up before her sister could make it worse. The bookstore was everything he'd promised. Creaky floors, narrow aisles, the smell of old paper, and a fat orange cat asleep in a patch of sun on the front counter, who opened one eye when Emily walked in, decided she wasn't worth the effort, and went back to sleep. Darius was already there in a different jacket holding a paperback he wasn't reading, and when he saw her, his whole face did the thing she was starting to look for the window catching light. "You came," he said. "You sound surprised." "I'm always going to sound surprised," Darius said. "For a while. That's just where I am. Good things show up, I act surprised. Give it time." They walked the aisles. That was the whole date. Really walking the aisles, pulling books off shelves, reading each other the worst opening lines they could find, arguing about whether a man who didn't like a particular famous novel could be trusted. Emily found she could talk to him the way she used to be able to talk to people before Brian, before the wall, before the year, easily, stupidly, without measuring every word for the danger in it. He told her about Maya's reading level, and how she'd recently decided she was too old for the picture books they used to read together, and how he was secretly grieving that the loss of those nights, the small ordinary endings that nobody warns you about. "She's growing up," Emily said. "That's good. That's what you want." "I know it's what I want," Darius said. "Doesn't mean it doesn't hurt. Most of the things you want hurt a little when you finally get them. They cost something. The picture books cost me her getting older. That's the deal." He put a book back on the shelf. "Her mother used to say that. Everything good costs something, Darius. The only free things are the ones nobody wants." "She sounds smart." "She was the smartest person I ever met," he said simply. "I married up. Everybody knew it, me most of all. And there it was." Again. Emily noticed it this time. The way he could talk about his late wife with a kind of clean-settled grief. No jagged edges, the grief of a man who'd done the work, who'd sat in the dark with it for 4 years until it stopped cutting him. It was different from her own pain. Her pain about Brian was still jagged, still humiliating, still tangled up with shame, because her loss came with a side of "you were a fool, you were fooled, you handed it to him." Darius's loss was clean. He'd loved someone good and lost her to something nobody could fight. There was no shame in it. Emily envied him that a little, and then felt terrible for envying a widower his clean grief, and the whole tangle of it must have shown on her face, because Darius said, "Where'd you go?" "Nowhere. Emily, I was thinking your grief is cleaner than mine," she said, because she'd promised herself she wouldn't lie to him, even when the truth was ugly. "You lost someone good. I lost someone who turned out to be a thief, and the worst part is I miss him sometimes anyway. And then I hate myself for missing a man who robbed me. Your pain, you get to keep your dignity. Mine just makes me feel stupid." She laughed, but it didn't land. "Sorry. That's a horrible thing to say to a widower." "No," Darius said slowly. "No. That's the realest thing anybody's said to me about it." He was quiet a moment. "But you've got it wrong. About the dignity." "Do I?" "You're ashamed you got fooled. Like getting fooled means you were stupid." He turned to face her fully in the narrow aisle, the cat watching them both from the counter now with lazy interest. "Emily, the only people who never get fooled are the people who never trust anybody. And those people aren't smart. They're just alone. You got fooled because you were capable of trusting somebody all the way. That's not a flaw. That's the whole thing. That's the only valuable thing a person's got. He didn't expose your stupidity. He exploited your best quality. There's a difference, and the difference is everything, and if you can't see it, that's because he's still got his hand on the scale in your head." Emily stood very still in the creaky aisle of the bookstore, with the menace cat watching, and the smell of old paper all around her, and she felt something shift, some heavy stone that had been sitting on her chest for a year roll, just slightly to one side, just enough to breathe under. "You should have been a therapist," she said when she could talk. "I can't afford a therapist," she added. "So you'll have to do." "I'm cheaper," Darius agreed. "And I come with a menace cat." That became the rhythm of the weeks that followed. Coffee that turned into walks. Walks that turned into dinners at small, loud places where nobody was performing. Long phone calls after Maya went to sleep. Darius's voice low, so he wouldn't wake her, the particular intimacy of two tired people talking in the dark about nothing and everything. Emily learned the shape of his days. The 6 a.m. alarm, the lunches packed the school drop-off, The long hours at a job he was strangely vague about the pickup. The dinner that was fine, but not exciting. The bath and the books, and the 3 stuffed animals in their exact order, and then the quiet, and then her. And Darius learned the shape of hers, the new bookkeeping job with the boss who didn't ask questions, the $150 a paycheck that went to debt, that wasn't hers. The mother who called every day. The careful, frightened, slowly thawing way she let him a little closer each time. And then panicked, and pushed back, and then to her own astonishment let him close again. "You pushed me away again last night," he said one evening on the phone. No accusation in it, just observation. "I know. You said you were busy this weekend. Then your sister posted a picture of you two doing nothing on the couch." "You follow my sister. Maya follows everyone. She showed me. She thinks you're the lady Dad smiles at his phone about." A pause. Her words. Emily closed her eyes. "I panicked. You were getting it was getting good. And when it gets good, I get scared. And when I get scared, I make up a reason to disappear for a few days. I told you I'd do this. I warned you." "You did warn me," Darius agreed. "I'm not mad. I just want you to know I noticed and I'm still here. That's the whole message. You ran. I noticed I'm still here. You can do it as many times as you need to. I told you I'd wait. I'm a patient man. Comes from braiding hair off internet videos. You learn patience or you learn nothing." "Why?" Emily said. "That's what I don't understand. Why are you so patient with this? I'm Darius. I'm a project. I'm work. There are women out there who'd just be easy, who'd just say yes and mean it and not run every 3rd weekend. Why this? Why me?" And there was a silence on the line, and then Darius said something that she'd carry around for a long time. "Because easy isn't real," he said. "I had easy before. Not with my wife. My wife was real. My wife was the realest thing there ever was. But after the 2 years my friend was pushing me to date, I went out a couple of times quietly, just to get her off my back. And those women were easy. They were charming and available, and they said all the right things. And you know what? I felt sitting across from them. Nothing. Less than nothing. Because they were performing, and I could smell the performance, and every smooth, easy, charming thing they said just reminded me of how much I'd lost, because the thing I lost was real. And you can't replace real with easy. You can only replace it with real. And you, Emily, sitting there in your terrible sweater, wanting me to leave, that was the first real thing I'd seen in 4 years. Easy I can get anywhere. Real almost killed me to find. I'm not going to fumble it because it's also hard. Real is always hard. That's how you know it's real." Emily didn't say anything for a long moment. In the dark of her apartment, with the phone warm against her ear, she felt the wall move again, another stone rolling aside, and it terrified her how good it felt, because the better it felt, the more she had to lose. "You can't keep saying things like that," she finally said. "Why not?" "Because I'm going to start believing them, and then I'm going to have something to lose. And I have spent a whole year arranging my entire life so I'd never have anything to lose again, and you're undoing it one phone call at a time, and I don't know whether to thank you or hate you for it." "You can do both," Darius said. "Maya does both to me daily. It's fine. I've got room for both." She laughed, helpless. "Tell me about your day. Distract me from how scared I am." "My day." She heard him settle back, heard the creak of whatever chair he sat in for these calls. "My day was long. There's a thing at work. A big decision coming up. People stressed about it. I had meetings about it for about 6 hours. What kind of decision? The boring kind." That little pull-up short again, though, Emily, warm and unguarded and half in love, didn't catch it. "Logistics stuff. Numbers and people. You don't want to hear it. I keep telling you I love boring. And I keep telling you it's more boring than you can imagine," Darius said easily, smoothly, and steered the conversation back to her, to Maya, to the menace cat, to anything but the 6 hours of meetings, and the big decision, and the size of the thing he kept folded up and quiet in his pocket. Because the longer it went, the harder it got to say. That was the thing about a small omission Darius had learned. This was learning it again, now the slow, expensive way. When you leave something out on the first day, it's nothing. It's discretion. It's a sensible man protecting himself from being wanted for the wrong reasons. But every day, you don't correct it. The leaving out gets a little heavier, a little harder to undo, because now it's not just a thing you didn't mention. It's a thing you kept not mentioning day after day, call after call, and the not mentioning starts to look like a decision. And the decision starts to look like a lie, even though it never felt like one in any single moment. He told himself he'd tell her when the time was right. He told himself he was waiting until he was sure she wanted him. Darius, the tired single dad, the man who couldn't braid hair, the man who acted surprised when good things showed up, and not the other thing, the thing on the door, the thing in the bank account, the thing that had made easy women say all the right things. He told himself it was protection. He told himself it was wisdom. What he didn't let himself think about was what it would feel like to her on the day she found out, given everything a thief had already done to her, about trust and silence, and men who weren't what they seemed. He didn't let himself think about that at all. "Can I ask you something serious?" Emily said a few weeks later. They were in his car in the parking lot of a restaurant, and they'd been talking for an hour without going in. The way they did the conversation always more important than the destination. "You can ask. I might not answer." She'd stolen his line. He smiled at it. "When do I meet Maya?" The smile went careful, not gone careful. "You want to meet Maya?" "I don't know," Emily said honestly. "That's the truth. I don't know if I want to, or if it terrifies me, or both. But you talk about her all the time, and she's clearly the whole center of your life. And at some point, if this is going somewhere, at some point, there's a 7-year-old in the equation, and I think I need to know what that's like before I let myself fall all the way in. Because falling for you is one thing. Falling for a family that's a different kind of fall. That's a higher fall. And I've already broken everything once. I don't know if I survive breaking it twice." Darius was quiet, his hands on the wheel, even though the car was off. "That's fair," he said. "That's more than fair. That's the most grown-up thing anybody's ever said to me about it." He turned to look at her. "Here's my side of it. Maya lost her mother. She doesn't remember her much. She was 3, but she knows there's a hole. She knows other kids have too. And every single thing I've done for 4 years, every choice I've made has been about not putting another hole in that kid. So when I introduce her to someone, and I have never done it not once in 4 years, you'd be the first when I introduce her to someone. It's not a date. It's not casual. It's me saying to my daughter, this person might stay. And if I say that to her, and then the person doesn't stay." He shook his head slowly. "I can take a hole punched in me. I've got lots of holes. One more fine. But I will not let one get punched in her. So before Maya meets you, I have to be sure. Not sure it'll work. Nobody's ever sure of that. But sure that you're real. Sure that you're not going to run on a Tuesday and leave a 7-year-old wondering what she did wrong." Emily felt the weight of it settle over the car. "So we both have the same fear," she said quietly. "I'm scared to fall because I've already broken once. You're scared to introduce me because she's already broken once." "Yeah. We're a real pair, aren't we? 2 people standing at the edge of the same cliff holding hands, both of us. Sure, we're going to be the one who falls." "Best description of the whole thing I've heard," Darius said, and there was the rusty smile again, but underneath it, something raw. "But Emily, for what it's worth, the fact that you asked about her, the fact that you're scared of falling for her and not just me, that tells me more than any easy yes ever could. Easy women never asked about Maya. They asked about—" He stopped. Asked about what? And here was a fork, a real one, a moment where the truth was right there, where he could have said, "They asked about my money, my title, my house. The thing I keep in my pocket, and let the whole thing out into the open where it belonged." He felt it. He felt the door standing open. He felt how good it would be to just walk through it and be done carrying the weight. And then the old reflex, older than Emily, older than his caution, 4 years deep and bone set, closed the door again, soft and automatic, like a man stepping back from a curb. They asked about themselves, he said instead. That's all. They asked about themselves and never once about her. And you asked about her first thing. That's the difference. That's the whole difference. It was true. Every word of it was true. It just wasn't the whole truth, and the whole truth got heavier and got quieter and got buried one more day. Okay, Emily said. She reached over and put her hand on his on the steering wheel the first time she'd reached for him instead of letting him reach for her. And Darius went very still, the way you go still, when a wild thing you've been patient with finally steps close on its own. Then here's my deal. I'll stop running. I'm not promising I'll be good at it. But I'll stop running on purpose the way I do the disappearing for a weekend thing. I'll try to just stay. And you tell me when you're sure. About Maya. No rush. I'm scared of that cliff too. But when you're sure you tell me, and I'll be brave if you'll be brave, and we'll fall off the stupid cliff together. Deal. Deal, Darius said. And he meant it. He meant every word. And he turned his hand over under hers so their palms met, and they sat in the dark parking lot like that for a while, two scarred people deciding to be brave. And it was by every measure either of them had the best moment of the last 4 years, for one of them, and the best of the last 12 months for the other. And the thing in his pocket sat there through all of it, quiet as keys getting heavier. The weeks turned warmer. Emily stopped running mostly. She slipped twice, vanished for a long weekend each time, and both times Darius did the same thing. Noticed, named it, gently stayed. And both times she came back a little faster than the time before, a little less ashamed, and the wall came down, stone by stone, until one night she realized, lying awake at 2 a.m, that she hadn't dressed defensively in weeks. That she'd worn the navy dress she'd fished it out of a donation bag, the one her sister had begged her to wear, the one she'd thrown in the trash the morning of the blind date, that she'd worn it on their last dinner without even thinking about it. That somewhere in there she'd stopped trying to make him leave. It scared her so badly she almost ran again. But she didn't. She called him instead at 2 a.m, and he picked up on the second ring, his voice thick with sleep. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong, she said. That's what's wrong. Nothing's wrong, and I'm terrified. Ah, Darius said. She heard him sit up, heard him pad quietly out of his room so he wouldn't wake Maya. The good kind of terrified. Is there a good kind? There's the kind where something's actually wrong. And there's the kind where nothing's wrong, and your whole body doesn't know how to handle it, because it's been braced for impact so long it forgot how to stand up straight. A pause. That second kind. That's the one you've got. I know it, because I've got it too. You do, Emily. I haven't slept right in weeks, Darius said quietly in the dark of his hallway. Not because of you. Because of how far in I am. I lie there, and I think this is the part where it gets taken away. This is always the part where it gets taken away. And then I think, no, maybe not this time. And that thought is scarier than the first one, because if I let myself believe it and I'm wrong. He didn't finish. So yeah, the good kind of terrified. I've got it bad. We've both got it bad. We're two people lying awake in 2 different beds at 2 a.m, scared out of our minds because something good is happening and neither one of us trusts good. What do? We tell each other the truth, Darius said. Even at 2 a.m, especially at 2 a.m. That's the deal we made. No secrets, no performing, no pretending we're not scared. We just keep telling each other the truth, and we see how far it takes us. Emily lay in the dark with the phone against her ear and her heart pounding, and she made him a promise she meant with everything she had. No secrets, she said. Okay, no secrets. I can do that. I want that. God, I want that so much it scares me. Just one place in my whole life where nobody's hiding anything, where I never have to wonder what's underneath, where what I see is what's actually there. That's all I want, Darius. After Brian. That's the only thing I want. Just one person who's exactly what they seem. There was a silence on the line. It went on a beat too long. If she'd been less tired, less open, less far in, she might have heard it. The silence of a man holding something in his pocket. the silence of a door that should have been opened right then and wasn't. She might have heard the 4 years of reflex closing it one more time, soft and automatic in the worst possible moment, right after she'd told him the one thing she needed more than anything else in the world. But she was tired, and she was open, and she was further in than she'd let herself be in a year. So she didn't hear it. "You've got that," Darius said, finally, his voice careful in the dark. "I'm exactly what I seem, Emily. Go to sleep. I'm not going anywhere." And he wasn't lying exactly. That was the terrible part. He was a tired, single father who couldn't braid hair and acted surprised when good things showed up and loved his daughter more than his own life. All of that was true. He was exactly what he seemed. He was just also one more thing he hadn't said. And on the other end of the line, Emily Carter closed her eyes and let herself believe for the first time in a year that she'd finally found the one safe place, the one person with nothing underneath, nothing hidden, nothing waiting to come out later and prove her own eyes had lied to her again. She fell asleep with the phone still in her hand, and she slept better than she had in 12 months. She had no idea she was sleeping at the edge of the same cliff she'd already fallen off once, and she had no idea how close the ground was. The day Darius decided he was sure was an ordinary Thursday, and he called her at lunch, which he never did. "You're calling me in the daytime," Emily said. "Something's wrong. Is Maya okay?" "Maya's fine. Maya's better than fine." She could hear something in his voice she hadn't heard before, a kind of nervous brightness, the sound of a careful man doing something uncareful. "I'm calling because I'm sure." Emily's whole body went still at her desk. "Sure about what?" "You know what?" She did. She set down the pen she was holding. "Darius, I want you to meet her," he said. "Maya, I've been thinking about it for weeks, and I keep waiting to feel ready, and I finally figured out I'm never going to feel ready. That's not a thing that happens. You don't get ready, you just decide. So I'm deciding. I want my daughter to meet the woman I—" A pause. He'd never said it. Neither of them had said it. "The woman I'm in this with. If you still want to. If you're still brave." Emily sat at her desk with the phone pressed hard against her ear and felt the cliff right there under her feet. The higher cliff. The family cliff. The one she'd told him in his car was a fall she didn't know if she'd survive. And every instinct she'd spent a year sharpening told her to run, to disappear for a weekend, to find a reason. She felt the old machinery start to turn, and then she thought about a man lying awake in a hallway at 2 a.m, telling her the truth because they'd made a deal to. And she shut the machinery off. "I'm still brave," she said, and her voice only shook a little. "When?" "Saturday. Lunch. Somewhere with no pressure, a park maybe, or that diner with the milkshakes somewhere she can leave the table and go look at something if she needs to. Kids need an exit. So do you, so you'll match." She could hear him smiling. No big production. Just 3 people getting a milkshake. If it's weird, it's weird, and we try again. But I don't think it'll be weird. I think she's going to like you. I think you're going to like her. And I think— He stopped. "You think what?" "I think this is the part where my life starts again," Darius said quietly. "After 4 years of just keeping it running. I think Saturday's the day it starts again. And I wanted to be the one to tell you that, so you'd know what it means to me. So you'd know I'm not playing." Emily had to press her hand flat against her mouth for a second before she could answer. "I'm not playing either," she said. "Saturday. I'll be there. I'll be Darius. I'll be so nervous I'll probably talk too much and say something stupid, just warning you now. She's 7. She thinks all adults say stupid things. You'll fit right in." They hung up, and Emily sat at her desk and didn't work for the rest of the afternoon. And for the first time in over a year, she let herself feel the dangerous thing all the way. The thing she'd dressed ugly to avoid the thing she'd built a whole wall against. She let herself feel hope. And it didn't feel like a trap. It felt like a window. It felt like a door in a bookstore opening after a long time. It felt like being seen and not robbed for it. She should have known. That was what she'd think later. She should have known that the moment she finally let the hope all the way in was exactly the moment the whole thing was sitting on a fault line. The diner with the milkshakes was loud and bright, and Emily got there 20 minutes early, which was a mistake because it gave her 20 minutes to spiral. She'd changed clothes 4 times. She'd landed on the navy dress, the one she'd thrown in the trash, and fished back out because it felt like a flag planted in new ground. I'm not that woman anymore, the one who dressed to be rejected. She'd bought a small gift and then put it back in her bag because it felt like trying too hard, then taken it out again, then put it back. By the time the door opened and Darius walked in, holding the hand of a small, serious-faced girl in a yellow shirt, Emily had sweated through her resolve about 4 times. But then the little girl looked at her, and everything Emily had rehearsed went straight out of her head because Maya Cole did not look at her the way children look at strangers. She looked at her the way a person looks at someone they've heard about. She walked right up to the table, her father a half step behind, and she put her hands on her hips, and she said with the devastating directness of the very young, "Are you the lady?" My dad smiles at his phone about. Emily heard Darius make a strangled sound behind her. "Maya, that's me," Emily said. "I'm the lady." I'm sorry to report he also smiles at his phone about other things. I've seen him smile at a cat video. Maya considered this. Was it the orange cat one with the box? The one with the box. That one's good, Maya admitted, and climbed up into the booth across from Emily, and that somehow impossibly was that. The hardest introduction of Darius Cole's 4 years of single fatherhood lasted about 9 seconds, and turned on a cat video. And over his daughter's head, he looked at Emily with an expression so naked and grateful that she had to look down at the menu to keep from coming apart. It went better than either of them had let themselves hope. Maya was funny and bossy, and exhausting in exactly the way Darius had described, and she interrogated Emily without mercy. Did she have a job? Yes. Boring. Did she have a cat? No. Why not allergies, did she? Like Darius's cooking, Emily had never had it well. It was fine, but not exciting. Did Emily know how to make anything exciting? Emily said she made a pretty good grilled cheese, and Maya said grilled cheese wasn't exciting either, but it was at least better than fine, which Darius declared the highest compliment his daughter had given any food in 2 years. "She likes you," he said quietly while Maya was up at the counter inspecting the milkshake machine with the manager's reluctant permission. "I've never seen her like somebody that fast. Ever. She's wonderful, Darius. She's God. She's so much like how you describe her except more. The phone thing. She just walked right up and, I know. I'm going to be apologizing for that for a week." But he was glowing. He couldn't help it. The careful, tired man was just gone, and in his place was someone Emily hadn't fully met yet, someone lit up from the inside. "This is it," he said. "You realize that. This is the thing I've been scared of for 4 years, and it took 9 seconds and a cat video. This is my life starting again, right here. This table." And Emily, watching Maya negotiate for extra whipped cream, felt the last stone come out of the wall and she let it. "Mine too," she said. "Right here. This table." It should have ended there. It should have been the happy ending, the 2 scarred people and the funny little girl in the yellow shirt and the milkshakes. If the story were kind, it would have stopped at the diner. It didn't stop at the diner. It came apart 4 days later, and it came apart over nothing, over a magazine of all things, in a doctor's waiting room. Emily had a dentist appointment she'd been putting off because she couldn't afford it, and finally couldn't avoid it. She sat in the waiting room with her insurance paperwork and her dread, and she picked up a magazine off the table to keep from thinking about the bill. One of those glossy regional business magazines that exist in every waiting room in America, and she flipped through it without reading it the way you do. And then she stopped flipping, because there on a full page, under a headline about the region's most influential business leaders, was a photograph of Darius Cole. Not a Darius who did logistics and operations and boring corporate stuff. Not a tired single dad who couldn't afford a therapist. This Darius was in a tailored suit, standing in front of a glass building with his name on it, and the caption beneath the photo identified him as the founder and chief executive of a company Emily had actually heard of, a company whose trucks she'd seen on the highway, a company the magazine described in numbers with a lot of zeros after them. The article called him one of the most successful executives in the state. It mentioned in passing the way these articles do the size of the company he'd built, the thousands of people he employed, the personal fortune the writer estimated with the breezy confidence of someone estimating other people's money. Emily sat in the dentist's waiting room with the magazine open in her lap and felt the floor go out from under her. Boring. He'd said boring. He'd said it more than once. It's logistics, it's operations, moving things from one place to another and making sure the numbers add up. You don't want to hear about it. 6 hours of meetings. A big decision coming up. The boring kind. She'd asked him point blank in his car in the dark on the phone at 2 a.m. She'd told him she heard her own voice saying it lying in the dark with the phone against her ear, "The only thing I want is one person who's exactly what they seem." And he'd been silent a beat too long, and then he'd said, "You've got that I'm exactly what I seem." He was not what he seemed. He was the founder and CEO of a company worth more money than Emily would see in 10 lifetimes. And he had sat across from her in a coffee shop and let her talk about her $150 of paycheck debt. Let her be ashamed of her bleach-stained sweater. Let her apologize for being a financial disaster. Let her offer to be his cheap therapist because she couldn't afford a real one, and the whole time he'd known. The whole time he'd had this. And he'd said boring. He'd looked her in the eye, the man who'd told her a thief had stolen her ability to trust her own judgment, and he'd kept the single biggest fact about himself in his pocket like a set of keys. The dental hygienist called her name twice before Emily heard it. She didn't remember the appointment. She remembered the drill and the bright light, and the woman asking if she was okay, and Emily saying yes through a mouthful of cotton, and she remembered driving home with her hands too tight on the wheel, and she remembered the exact moment at a red light when the shock burned off and the thing underneath it caught fire. Because it wasn't the money. She'd think about that later, would force herself to be honest about it later in the wreckage. It was never the money. If he'd told her on the first day, "I run a company, I do all right, I keep it quiet because people get weird about it," she wouldn't have cared. She'd have laughed and said her grilled cheese was still better than his cooking, and that would have been the end of it. The money was nothing. The silence was everything. The silence was Brian. The silence was a man she'd looked in the eye for 2 years, seeing love, seeing safety being wrong. The silence was her own judgment, failing her again exactly the way it had failed her before, exactly the way she'd sworn she would never let it fail her again. She'd told Darius the whole anatomy of her wound. "He didn't just take my money, he took my ability to believe my own gut." And Darius had nodded and understood and named it perfectly, and then done the one thing guaranteed to tear it back open. He'd let her believe she was safe while hiding the truth, which was the exact crime. Not the money, the hiding, the letting her trust a version of him that wasn't real. She was supposed to see him that night. He called at 6. "Hey," he said, warm, easy, the way he'd been since the diner, since Maya, since his life started again. "Maya wants to know if you can make the grilled cheese sometime. She's been talking about it for 4 days. I think you've ruined her on my cooking forever, which frankly—" "I saw the magazine," Emily said. The line went quiet. It was the same silence she hadn't heard at 2 a.m. She heard it now. She heard all of it. "What magazine?" Darius said, but it was already in his voice, the catch, the knowing. "Don't." Her voice came out flat and terrible, the flat gray voice from the bathroom floor, the voice from the year she didn't talk about. "Don't do that. Don't make me say it and then act surprised. The business magazine, the dentist's office, your picture, your suit, your building with your name on it, the founder and CEO, the numbers with all the zeros." Boring. You said boring, Darius. You said it to my face. You said it on the phone. You let me— Her voice cracked, and she hated. It hated that it cracked, hauled it back flat. "You let me offer to be your therapist because I can't afford a real one. You sat there and let me do that. Emily, I can explain. I asked you. That's the part I can't, I asked you. In your car, on the phone. I said the only thing I want, the only thing I want in the whole world after what Brian did, is one person who is exactly what they seem. And you went quiet, and then you said you were exactly what you seemed. You looked me in the eye and said it. So either explain to me how the founder of a company with your name on the building is exactly what he seems, as a guy who does boring logistics, or don't insult me by trying. It wasn't a lie, Darius said, and even as he said it, he heard how it sounded. It wasn't the truth. I do logistics. I do operations. That's literally what the company. You own the company, Darius. There's a difference between doing logistics and owning the logistics. You know there's a difference. You hid behind a technically true sentence, so you wouldn't have to tell me the real thing, which is the oldest trick a liar has, and I know it. I know it better than anybody because I lived with a man who could make a forged signature sound like a love letter. The second she said it, she knew it had landed somewhere. It shouldn't have knew. She'd reached for the cruelest available comparison, and she didn't take it back. I am not Brian, Darius said low. Then why did you do what Brian did? I did not do what Brian did. You hid the truth from me and let me trust a version of you that wasn't real. That's what he did. That's exactly what he did. He let me love a man who didn't exist. She was crying now, and furious that she was crying. You want to know what the worst part is? The worst part isn't that you have money. I don't care about your money. I would have laughed about your money. The worst part is that I told you exactly where my wound was. I drew you a map. I said, this is the thing that destroys me. This is the thing I can't survive twice, somebody letting me trust them and being wrong. And you took the map and you understood it perfectly, and you said the smartest, kindest thing anybody's ever said to me about it, and then you walked straight into the middle of the wound and lived there for 2 months. There was a long silence. You're right, Darius said finally, and his voice had changed, the easy warmth gone something raw and exhausted in its place. About the wound, about the map. You're right. I'm not going to argue with that part because you're right. Then why? Because I have a wound too, he said. And mine made me do it. The same way yours makes you run on weekends and dress like a hostage for a blind date. I have a thing that's broken in me, and it made me do this. And I'm not telling you that as an excuse, I'm telling you so you understand it wasn't about you. Tell me, right now, the real reason, not the technically true version, the real one. And on the other end of the line, in a house that had gone quiet because a 7-year-old was asleep. Darius Cole finally opened the door he'd been holding shut for 2 months, and the worst of it came out. Because I've been wanted for it before, he said. The money, the company, the name on the building. After my wife died, when my friend pushed me out to date those women, the easy ones, the ones who said all the right things, Emily, they knew. Before they ever met me, they knew what I was worth. They'd looked it up. Same magazine, probably. And they'd show up already knowing, and every charming thing they said, I could see the math behind it. I could see them pricing me, and it made me feel like I wasn't a person, like I was an account. Like the man who couldn't braid his daughter's hair didn't matter. The only thing that mattered was the number with the zeros. And I swore I would never again let somebody fall for the number before they fell for the man. So I started keeping it back. Just at first. Just until I knew. Just until I was sure somebody wanted me. And then I met a woman in a coffee shop in a sweater with a stain on it who wanted me to leave, who didn't know anything about me and didn't want to, who fell for the tired single dad who couldn't cook. And it was the realest thing that had happened to me in 4 years, and I was so scared of ruining it, so scared of becoming the number in your eyes, that I just kept not saying it. Every day I didn't say it. It got heavier and harder to say, until I was so far in, I couldn't figure out how to say it without it blowing up exactly the way it's blowing up right now. Emily listened to all of it. She sat on her kitchen floor. She'd slid down the cabinets. At some point she didn't remember doing it. Her back against the cupboard, the way her back had been against the tub a year ago, and she listened to the whole thing. And the terrible part, the part that made it so much worse, was that she understood it. She understood it completely, because it was the same shape as her own thing. He'd been hurt in a specific way, wanted for the wrong reasons, reduced to a number, and he'd built a defense against it, and the defense had made him do something that hurt the person he loved, which was exactly what she did. She'd been hurt in a specific way, robbed by a man she trusted, and she'd built a defense against it. The sweater, the running, the rehearsed rejection, and her defense hurt people too. Hurt him every time she vanished for a weekend. They were the same. They'd been the same since the first hour in the coffee shop. Two people walking around with a hole in them, building the same wall out of different materials. She understood it, and understanding it didn't fix it. That was the thing nobody told you. You could understand exactly why someone hurt you, understand it all the way down, and the understanding didn't make the hurt go away. It just sat there next to the hurt, the two of them together, the way grief sits next to dignity, the way love sits next to fear. "I believe you," Emily said. Then, "I believe you and it doesn't help," she said, and her voice was wrecked. "That's what I need you to understand. I believe every word you just said. I believe your wound made you do it. I believe you weren't pricing me. I believe you were protecting yourself. I believe it wasn't about the money, and it wasn't even really about me. I believe all of it. And I still can't. Darius, I still can't get up off this floor. Because believing you doesn't undo what it did. You let me trust a man who wasn't the whole truth. You did it for understandable reasons, beautiful reasons even, and it still landed in the exact place a thief already burned down. And now I'm sitting on my kitchen floor, having the exact feeling I swore I would die before I felt again. The feeling of finding out the person I trusted was keeping something from me. The feeling of my own eyes lying to me. You gave me that feeling. For good reasons. But you gave it to me. Tell me how to fix it, Darius said, and his voice broke the careful man's voice, breaking for the first time since she'd known him. Tell me what to do. I'll do anything. I don't care about the company. I don't care about any of it. I'll tell you every number. I'll show you. Every account. I'll never keep anything back again as long as I live. Just tell me how to fix it. I don't know if you can, Emily said. And that was the truth, the flat, terrible 2 a.m. truth, and saying it out loud made it real in a way it hadn't been a second before. I don't know if you can fix it, she said again. And not because I don't want you to. God, Darius, I want you to so badly. I met your daughter 4 days ago. She asked if I was the lady you smile at your phone about. I have been building a whole future in my head for 4 days, and now I'm sitting on my kitchen floor, and I don't know if any of it was real, and the not knowing is the thing. I can't survive. The not knowing is the exact thing that broke me last time. It was real. Emily. Every second of it was real. The diner was real. The bookstore was real. The man you fell for is real. I'm right here. I'm exactly... He stopped himself. He heard himself about to say it. I'm exactly what I seem. The same words from 2 a.m. He couldn't say them. He'd burned them. I have to go, Emily said. Don't. Please, don't hang up on this. If you hang up right now, you're going to spend all night building the wall back up, and tomorrow, I'll be Brian in your head, and I'll never get out. I know how this works. I watched you do it to yourself for 2 months. Please, don't hang up and do that. I have to go, she said again, and her voice was already going flat, already going gray, already pulling back behind the wall he'd watched her build and tear down and build again. I'm not hanging up to punish you. I'm hanging up because I'm about to say things I can't take back, and you don't deserve all of them, and I can't tell anymore which ones you deserve and which ones belong to Brian, and that's exactly the problem. That's exactly what you did to me. You made it so I can't tell the difference anymore. So I have to go. Before I put your face on his crimes. I owe you that much. I owe you the chance to not be him in my head, even if I can't give you anything else right now. Emily. Tell Maya, she started, and then couldn't finish it. The thought of the little girl in the yellow shirt nearly taking her all the way down. Don't tell Maya anything. Don't tell her I'm gone. Don't put a hole in her over this. Whatever happens, that was the one rule, right? Don't punch a hole in her. So whatever this is, you keep it away from her. You promise me that. That's the one thing I need you to promise me before I go." There was a long, shattered silence. "I promise," Darius said, and Emily Carter hung up the phone and set it face down on the kitchen floor beside her, and put her head down on her knees in the dark, and felt the whole carefully rebuilt year collapse back into rubble around her. Except it was worse this time. Infinitely worse. Because last time the man who broke her had been a thief and a stranger to her heart by the end, and this time the man on the other end of the phone was someone she understood completely, someone whose wound matched her own, someone she'd watched be patient and kind and brave, someone whose daughter had asked her a question across a milkshake 4 days ago. This time, she wasn't broken by a villain. This time, she was broken by someone exactly as scared as she was. And somewhere across town in a quiet house, a man who had finally 4 years later let his life start again, sat alone in the dark with a dead phone in his hand and the magazine Truth out of his pocket at last, and far, far too late, and understood that the bad thing he'd been bracing for every single day for 4 years had finally come, and that this time, for the first time, it wasn't fate or cancer or bad luck that had taken the good thing away. This time, he'd done it himself. She built the wall back up in 3 days exactly the way he'd said she would. By the end of the first day, Darius was a man who'd hidden something from her. By the end of the second, he was a man who'd lied. By the end of the third, lying awake with the phone face down on the nightstand where she'd put it after the call. He was Brian. Not in the facts. She knew the facts were different. She knew it in the clear daylight part of her brain. But the 2 in the morning part, the part that ran the wall, the part that had kept her alive the whole gray year, that part had already filed Darius Cole in the same drawer as the man who forged her signature. And once a thing was in that drawer, it was very, very hard to get it out. Rachel came over on the 4th day because Emily had stopped answering her phone. "You look like the blind date morning," Rachel said, standing in the doorway. "You've got the face. The trash the good dress face. What happened?" "Nothing happened. It's over. It was always going to be over." "Emily. He lied to me, Rachel. He's not a logistics guy. He owns the company. He's a CEO. A real one. The kind in magazines. He's got more money than God, and he sat across from me for 2 months and let me apologize for my bleach sweater." She said it flat, recited it the way she'd recited the Brian story to lawyers until it stopped having the power to make her cry. "So, that's that. I knew it was too good. I told myself the whole time it was too good." Rachel came in and shut the door and sat down across from her sister, and she didn't say any of the things Emily expected. She didn't gasp. She didn't get angry on Emily's behalf. She just looked at her for a long moment and then said very carefully, "Did he steal from you?" "What?" "Darius? Did he take anything from you? Money? Your name? Did he open a card? Did he forge anything? Did he take one single thing that was yours?" Emily opened her mouth and closed it. "No," she said finally. "No, he didn't take anything." "So he's not Brian?" "That's not—" "I'm not saying he didn't hurt you," Rachel said. "I can see he hurt you. I haven't seen this face since last year, and I hate that I'm seeing it again. But I need you to hear me, because I'm your sister and I love you, and I watched what the last one did to you, so I get to say this." She leaned forward. "Brian hid things from you to take things from you. That's why he hid them. The hiding was the weapon. He kept secrets so he could rob you blind. That's what the lying was for. Now, you tell me, what did Darius's hiding get him? What did he take? Because from where I'm sitting, the man hid that he was rich, which is the opposite of what a con man does. A con man hides that he's broke. This man hid that he had everything. So before you put him in the Brian drawer, and I know you've already done it, I need you to at least be able to answer the question. What did the lie get him?" Emily sat in the chair with her sister's question sitting on her chest, and she couldn't answer it, because the answer was nothing. The answer was that the lie hadn't gotten him a single thing. He hadn't used the hidden money to take anything from her. He'd let her pay for her own cheap dinners half the time. He'd never once made her feel small about her debt. He'd done the opposite. He'd told her the debt wasn't a flaw. Told her the man who fooled her had exploited her best quality. The lie hadn't been a tool to rob her. The lie had been a wall, exactly like her sweater, exactly like her running a thing a scared person hides behind so they won't get hurt. He hadn't hidden the money to take from her. He'd hidden it to protect himself from being wanted for it, which was the thing he'd told her. On the phone, sobbing. I swore I'd never let somebody fall for the number before they fell for the man. It doesn't matter why he did it, Emily said, but it came out weaker than she meant. Doesn't it? It can't matter why he did it, Rachel, because if it matters why he did it, then I have to actually think about it, and if I actually think about it, then I have to feel all of it. And I can't. I can't do the wall and feel it at the same time. Those are two different things. You have to pick one. So pick the other one, Rachel said gently. For once. Just once. Pick feeling it. I don't know how anymore. Yeah, you do, Rachel said. You learned how this year. You just learned it from the wrong teacher. You learned it from him. She paused. From the man you're trying to put in the Brian drawer. He's the one who taught you how to feel it instead of building the wall. That's what you told me. 3 weeks ago you called me and you said, I'm not running anymore. I wore the navy dress he taught me how to just stay. So you already know how. You're just refusing to use it on him because he's the one who hurt you this time, and that feels backwards like rewarding him. But it's not for him, Em. It's for you. The staying was always for you. Emily put her head in her hands. Across town, Darius Cole was not building a wall because he didn't know how. He'd never had Emily's particular skill at it. His way of handling pain was the opposite. He buried himself in motion and duty in the machinery of a life that had to keep running whether or not he was okay. So he got up at 6. He packed the lunch. He did the school drop-off. He sat in his meetings about the big decision and the numbers and the people, and he said the right things, and not one person at his company knew that the man at the head of the table had lost the only thing that had made him feel alive in 4 years. It was Maya who knew. Children always know. You're sad, she announced at dinner on the 4th night over food that was as always fine, but not exciting. I'm fine, baby. You're not fine. You're doing the thing where you smile but your eyes don't. Maya pointed her fork at him with 7-year-old certainty. You did that thing when Mommy was sick. You think I don't remember, but I remember a little. You smile but your eyes don't. She put the fork down. Is it the grilled cheese lady? Darius set his own fork down very carefully. He'd promised. That was the last thing Emily had asked of him on the phone, the one thing she'd needed before she could hang up. Don't put a hole in her over this. Don't tell Maya anything. Keep it away from her. And he'd promised. So he could not tell his daughter the truth. He could not tell her that the grilled cheese lady was gone, that he'd driven her away, that the bad thing he'd braced against for 4 years had finally come, and he'd been the one holding the knife. But he also could not lie to her. Not after what lying had just cost him. He sat at the table and felt the whole impossible shape of it, the promise to Emily and the truth he owed his daughter pulling in opposite directions, and he understood with a kind of awful clarity that this was exactly the trap he'd built for himself. This was what came of keeping things in your pocket. Eventually, you ran out of pockets. Eventually, a 7-year-old looked at you across a dinner table and asked you a true question, and you had nowhere left to hide. The grilled cheese lady and I are having a hard time right now, Darius said. Did you do something? He almost laughed. Out of the mouths of babes. Yeah, he said. I did something. Did you say sorry? I did. I said sorry a lot. Did you mean it? More than anything. Maya considered this with the gravity of a small judge. When I do something to Keisha at school, she said, and I say sorry, sometimes she doesn't forgive me right away. She stays mad for a while. And you know what you always tell me. What do I always tell you, baby? You tell me I can't make somebody forgive me. You say sorry is the only part I get to control. The forgiving is their part. and I have to say my part, and then wait, and not be mad if their part takes a while." She looked at him very seriously. "Did you say your part?" Darius Cole looked at his 7-year-old daughter across a dinner of food that was fine, but not exciting, and felt his own advice come back across the table and land on him like a hand on the shoulder. "I said my part," he said quietly. "I think I have to wait now, and I have to not be mad if her part takes a while." "It might take a long while," Maya said with the brutal honesty he'd raised her to have. "Keisha stayed mad at me for a whole week one time, about a marker." She picked her fork back up. "But she forgave me eventually, because we were really friends. The not really friends don't forgive you. Only the really ones do." And then, having delivered the most devastating piece of wisdom Darius had heard in 4 years, she went back to her not exciting dinner, leaving her father sitting there with his throat closed and his eyes doing the thing where they didn't match the smile. He didn't call Emily. That was the hardest thing he'd ever made himself not do. Every part of him wanted to call her, to keep explaining, to keep saying his part over and over until it worked. But he understood now that more words weren't his part anymore. He'd said his part. The forgiving was hers. And calling her, pushing her, flooding her with more that would just be one more man not respecting the wall. One more man deciding he knew better than she did what she needed. He'd spent 2 months learning her. He knew that the worst thing he could do right now was chase. He'd told her in the very first hour in the coffee shop, "I'm done chasing." But I'll wait. There's a difference. So he waited. It was agony, and he waited. On the 5th day, Emily did something she hadn't planned to do. She drove to the bookstore. She told herself she wasn't doing it for any reason. She told herself she just needed to be somewhere with creaky floors and old paper, and a menace cat somewhere that wasn't her apartment with the phone face down on the nightstand. But she knew walking in that it was the place he'd taken her, that every aisle had a memory in it, that the fat orange cat asleep on the counter had watched Darius tell her that the man who fooled her had exploited her best quality instead of exposing her stupidity. She stood in the aisle where he'd said it. "He's still got his hand on the scale in your head," and she thought he was talking about Brian. But he could have been talking about himself now, because that was exactly what was happening. Darius had his hand on the scale in her head now too, except he wasn't doing it. She was doing it for him. She was the one weighting every memory toward the worst reading of it. She was the one taking 2 months of a real patient kind man and running it all through the Brian filter until it came out the other side, looking like a con. The cat woke up, regarded her, and to her surprise got down off the counter, patted over and wound once around her ankles before sitting on her foot the way menace cats do when they've decided you need it. He hid that he was rich. Emily told the cat because there was no one else to tell. That's the whole crime. He hid that he had everything. Brian hid that he had nothing. They're not the same. Rachel's right. They're not even close to the same. The cat blinked at her. "But it doesn't matter that they're not the same," she said, and her voice cracked in the empty aisle. "Because my body doesn't know the difference. My body just knows the feeling of finding out, the feeling of the floor going. My body files it all in the same drawer and slams it shut, and I can't argue my own body out of a feeling. That's not how feelings work." "You can actually," said a voice. Emily turned. It was the bookstore owner, an old woman with reading glasses on a chain who'd clearly heard the entire one-sided conversation with the cat and had the grace to look only mildly amused. "Sorry," Emily said, mortified. I didn't realize." "You can argue your body out of a feeling," the old woman said, ignoring the apology, settling onto a stool by the register. "It just takes longer than arguing your mind out of one, and you have to do it more times. Your mind you can change with a good sentence. Your body you have to change with repetition. You have to show it over and over that the new thing isn't the old thing. One time isn't enough. Your body doesn't believe words. It only believes evidence repeated." She adjusted her glasses. "That cat doesn't like anybody, by the way. He's sitting on your foot. I've owned him 6 years, and he's never once sat on a customer's foot. Whatever you're beating yourself up about, the cat's got an opinion, and the cat thinks you're all right." Emily looked down at the menace cat sitting on her foot, and something in her chest came loose, and she laughed, and the laugh turned into something else, and she stood in the bookstore aisle where Darius had told her she wasn't stupid for trusting, and she finally, 4 days too late, let herself feel the whole thing instead of building the wall against it. She felt the betrayal real. His silence had been real. It had landed in the worst place, and she got to be hurt by it. But underneath the betrayal, when she stopped slamming the drawer shut long enough to actually look, she felt the rest of it too. She felt 2 months of a man who noticed when she ran and stayed anyway. She felt a phone call at 2 in the morning, his voice in a dark hallway telling her the truth because they'd made a deal to. She felt a diner and a little girl in a yellow shirt asking if she was the lady. Her dad smiled at his phone about. She felt the difference finally between a man who hid things to take from her and a man who hid one thing because he was as scared of being wanted for the wrong reasons as she was of being left. They were the same wound. She'd known it from the first hour and forgotten it in the wreckage. 2 people walking around with a hole in them building the same wall out of different materials. His wall was the hidden money. Hers was the bleach sweater. And she'd spent 4 days condemning him for doing the exact thing she did, protecting himself in a way that ended up hurting the person he loved. How many weekends had she vanished on him? How many times had he noticed and named it gently and stayed? She'd run over and over, hidden behind her wall over and over, and he had never once put her in a drawer and slammed it shut. He'd waited. Every single time he'd waited. And the first time he ran because that's what the hidden money was. She saw it now. It was his version of vanishing for a weekend. It was him hiding behind his wall, the very first time he did to her. What she'd done to him a dozen times, she'd put him in the drawer with the thief and locked it. "I have to go," Emily said to the bookstore owner, and the cat, sensing the shift, got off her foot. "You generally do," the old woman said placidly, "when you finally figure out what you came in to figure out. Go on." The cat already knew. The cat knew the second you walked in. Emily called him from the car in the bookstore parking lot. She didn't trust herself to drive yet, didn't trust herself to wait until she got home. Didn't trust the wall not to come back up the second she had time to think. She called him right there, hands shaking, and he answered on the first ring the way he always had, and she could hear in the single word, "hello," that he hadn't slept, that he'd been sitting in the agony of his own discipline for 5 days, waiting, not chasing. Doing the hardest thing she'd ever asked anyone to do, without her ever asking it. "I put you in a drawer," Emily said. A silence. "What?" "I have a drawer, in my head. It's where Brian lives. And the second I saw that magazine, I put you in it, and I slammed it shut. And for 4 days you've been in there with him, and that's not Darius. That's not fair, and it's not true. And I know it's not true, and I did it anyway, because it's the only way I know how to be safe." She was crying again, but it was a different kind of crying, the kind that lets something out instead of holding something in. "You're not in the drawer. I'm taking you out of the drawer. I should never have put you in it. You hid that you had everything." Brian hid that he had nothing. My sister had to say it to my face before I could hear it. "You didn't take one single thing from me. You did the opposite. You gave me back something he took. You gave me back the part of me that could trust my own gut. You told me my gut wasn't stupid, and then I went and used my own gut to convict you of being him, that's the cruelest thing I could have done with the gift you gave me, and I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." "Emily!" His voice was wrecked. "Let me finish, please. I have to say all of it or the wall comes back." She pressed the heel of her hand against her eyes. "You ran. That's what the money was. It was you running. It was your version of me vanishing for a weekend. You got scared I'd want you for the wrong reasons, the way scared people get, and you hid behind a wall the exact same way I do. And the difference is, when I ran you stayed. Every time. You noticed, and you named it, and you stayed, and you waited. 12 times. And the very first time you ran, I locked you in a drawer with a thief." Her voice broke completely. "So this is me staying. Okay. This is me doing the thing you taught me. You ran. I noticed and I'm still here. That's the whole message. You ran. I noticed I'm still here. I'm using your own words on you because you were right. You were right about all of it. That's the whole thing. Love is, isn't it? It's staying through the running. I'm so sorry, Darius said, and the careful man was gone completely, now his voice in pieces. Emily, I'm so sorry. You drew me a map. You told me exactly where the wound was, and I walked into it. I knew better. Every day I knew better, and I kept not telling you because telling you got harder every day, and I told myself I was protecting something. And I was just scared. I was just a scared man hiding behind a wall. You're right. You're exactly right. I know. I believe you. I believed you on the phone 4 days ago. That was the whole problem. I believed you, and it didn't help, but it helps. Now it helps now because I finally let myself feel the rest of it too, instead of just the betrayal. Can I see you? Darius said. I'm not chasing. You said don't chase. I haven't chased. I've sat here for 5 days not chasing, and it almost killed me. But you called me. So I'm asking, can I see you? Can we be in a room? I don't want to fix this over a phone. The first real thing that ever happened to me happened in a room across a table, and I want to, if we're going to put it back together, I want to do it the way we built it, in person, looking at each other. No technically true sentences, just the truth, all of it, in a room. Emily sat in the bookstore parking lot with the phone against her ear, and the menace cat watching her through the front window of the shop, and she felt the cliff under her feet again, the high one, the family one. Except now she understood something she hadn't understood before, standing at the edge of it. The cliff wasn't the danger. The cliff had never been the danger. The danger was standing at the edge of it forever alone, too scared to fall. Building walls out of sweaters and silence and hidden magazine truths, two people with the same wound, dying of the same loneliness 20 miles apart. There's a diner, Emily said, with milkshakes, and an exit in case it's weird. You said kids need an exit. I think I need one too. So there. Tomorrow. The diner where I met her. She took a breath that shook all the way down. And Darius bring Maya. The silence on the line was total. You sure? He said finally, and she could hear how much he was holding back, how hard he was working not to want it too much. She's Emily, if she's there, and then it's not going to be a hole, Emily said. That's why I want her there. I want her there because I'm done standing at the edge of the cliff. I want her there because if we're going to do this, the staying the real thing, then she's part of the real thing. She was part of it from the first hour. You couldn't even say her name in the coffee shop without your whole face changing. I'm not going to build a future with you in a room and then meet your daughter later like she's a separate negotiation. She's not separate. She asked me if I was the lady you smile at your phone about. The answer's still yes. I want her to hear me say the answer's still yes. Emily wiped her face. Bring her. Bring the whole real thing. I'm done with the edge of the cliff. I want to fall off the stupid thing. With both of you. She heard him exhale a long, shaking breath, 4 years and 5 days of held breath going out of him all at once. Okay, Darius said. Tomorrow. The diner. Both of us. A pause, and then in a voice she'd never heard him use, raw and open, and completely without a wall. Emily, thank you for taking me out of the drawer. Thank you for waiting, she said. Thank you for not chasing. Thank you for being the kind of man who knew the difference even when it was killing you. And across town in a quiet house, Darius Cole hung up the phone and sat for a moment in the dark. And then he went and knocked softly on a door, painted with stickers, and a sleepy voice said, Come in. And he sat on the edge of a small bed, surrounded by exactly 3 stuffed animals, in exactly one order. And his daughter looked up at him and saw, even half asleep, that something had changed. Your eyes match your smile, Maya said. Do they? They didn't this morning. Now they do. She sat up a little. Did the grilled cheese lady do her part? She did her part, baby. She did her part. So you don't have to wait anymore. Darius Cole looked at his daughter, the center of his whole world, the reason he'd kept the lights on through 4 years of dark, the 7-year-old who'd taught him his own lesson back across a dinner table. We're going to get milkshakes tomorrow, he said. All 3 of us. And Maya Cole, who did not yet understand everything that meant, but understood enough. Understood that her father's eyes matched his smile again, lay back down among her three animals, and closed her eyes and said the last thing before she fell asleep. The thing that her father would carry with him into the diner the next day, like something held carefully in two hands. "Good," she said. "I like her. She's better than fine." Emily got to the diner 20 minutes early, the same as the first time, and the same as the first time the 20 minutes nearly broke her. She sat in the same booth. She'd worn the navy dress again deliberately, the flag planted in new ground, and she folded and unfolded her hands on the table and watched the door, and the whole gray year rose up in her like floodwater. Every instinct she'd built was screaming, the old song, "Get up, leave text a flat tire, save yourself. You know how this ends? You've seen how this ends." The wall wanted to come back. The wall always wanted to come back. The bookstore owner had told her the truth. You couldn't argue your body out of a feeling with one good sentence. You had to show it over and over that the new thing wasn't the old thing, and her body did not yet believe. Her body was still braced for the floor to go, so she sat in the brace, and she waited, and she did not run. That was the whole victory she'd understand later. Not some grand gesture. Just a woman sitting in a booth refusing to get up, letting her body be wrong about the danger one more time, gathering the evidence repetition by repetition. The door opened. Darius came in holding Maya's hand, and the little girl was in a different shirt, this time, a blue one, and she was carrying something, a piece of paper folded clutched in one fist. The way children carry things that matter to them. Darius looked like a man who hadn't slept in 5 days, because he was a man who hadn't slept in 5 days. But his eyes. Emily saw his tired, careful eyes. They were doing the thing. The window catching light. Even exhausted. Even terrified. He saw her in the booth in the navy dress, and his whole face came open. He stopped a few feet from the table, like he wasn't sure he was allowed to sit, and that nearly undid her, this big man who could fill a boardroom hovering at the edge of a diner booth, waiting to be told he could come close. "You stayed," he said. "I told you I would. You ran. I noticed. I'm still here." Emily's voice shook on it. "Sit down, Darius. Both of you. Please sit down." He sat. Maya climbed up beside him across from Emily and put her folded paper on the table, and her two hands flat on top of it, guarding it, and looked back and forth between the two adults with the grave attention of a child who knows something important is happening, even when she doesn't have all the words for it. For a moment, nobody said anything. The first real thing in Darius Cole's life had happened across a table like this one, and now the second one was going to happen across this exact table, and they both felt the weight of the symmetry. "I have to say some things," Emily started, "and I have to say them in front of her because you don't have to do it in front of—" "I do. That's the point. That's the whole point." She looked at Maya, then back at Darius. "The thing that broke us was something said in the dark. Something kept quiet. A truth in a pocket. So I'm not going to fix it in the dark. I'm going to fix it in the brightest, loudest, most milkshake-filled room I can find in front of the person who matters most, because I am done with quiet. I am done with things kept back. After Brian, after this, I want everything that matters said out loud in the light where a 7-year-old can hear it. That's the only kind of safe I trust anymore." Darius's jaw worked. He nodded. "Okay," he said. "Okay, in the light." Emily turned to Maya. "Can I tell you something, and can you tell me if I get it wrong? Because you know your dad better than anybody." Maya nodded solemn. "Your dad did something that hurt me," Emily said, and she watched the little girl's face, carefully watched for the flinch ready to stop. "He didn't take anything from me. He didn't lie to be mean. But he kept something secret because he was scared, and the secret hurt me when I found it, because I had a bad thing happen before with somebody who kept secrets to be cruel. And when I found your dad's secret, I got the two mixed up in my head. I put your dad in the same box as the cruel person. And that wasn't fair, because your dad isn't cruel. Your dad is the opposite of cruel. Do you know what your dad did the whole time I was running away from him scared? Every single time." Maya shook her head. "He stayed." Emily said, and her voice cracked on it. He waited. He never got mad at me for being scared, not once. He just kept being there until I wasn't scared anymore. And then the one time he got scared and ran a little, I should have done the same thing for him. I should have stayed and waited. And I didn't at first. I locked him in a box. But I'm here now. I came back. Because your dad taught me how to come back. He taught me that's what you do when you love somebody. You come back. The word love sat on the table next to the folded paper, and the place settings out loud in the light for the first time. Darius made a small sound like something giving way. Maya looked at Emily for a long considering moment. Then she slid her folded paper across the table. I made you this, she said. Last night. Dad said your eyes matched your smile again, and I asked if it was about you, and he said yes, and I couldn't sleep, so I made it. Emily unfolded it with hands that weren't steady. It was a drawing. 3 figures done in the careful, lopsided way of a 7-year-old, a tall one, a medium one, and a small one holding hands in a row. Over the tall one, Maya had written Dad. Over the small one, she'd written me. And over the medium one, in painstaking block letters, she'd written a word, and then crossed part of it out and written it again to get it right. And the word was Emily. And beneath the 3 figures along the bottom of the page, the little girl had written the whole story in a single line. The entire thing. Everything the adults had needed, 5 days and a magazine and a phone call and a year of walls to understand, reduced by a 7-year-old to 7 words, better than fine. And that's really good. Emily put her hand over her mouth. It's us, Maya explained, in case it wasn't clear pointing. That's me. That's Dad. That's you. I made you in the middle so you wouldn't fall. She frowned at her own drawing, a small artist's dissatisfaction. I wanted to make a cat too, but I ran out of room. There's a cat. He's just not in the picture. He's at the bookstore. And Emily Carter, who had thrown a good dress in the trash a few months ago, because she'd decided she would never again be worth keeping, who had wiped the lipstick off her own mouth and tangled her own hair and dressed herself in stains so that a stranger would reject her before she could be hurt. Emily. Carter put her head down over a 7-year-old's drawing in a loud, bright diner and wept finally. The kind of weeping that had been stuck behind a wall for over a year. The kind that came out the good side instead of the gray side. And she felt the last of the wall come down, all of it, every stone, and she did not rebuild it. Don't cry, Maya said, alarmed. It's a happy picture. I made it happy on purpose. These are happy crying, Emily managed. I promise. These are the good kind. Your dad taught me there's a good kind. Oh. Maya relaxed. Okay, Dad does the eyes don't match thing. You do the crying but happy thing. You're kind of a weird grown-up too. She said it as the highest compliment, the way she'd said grilled cheese was better than fine. And across the table, Darius laughed a wet, broken laugh and reached out and finally carefully put his hand over Emily's on the table on top of the drawing, the 3 of them connected over the picture of the 3 of them. I'm going to tell you everything now, Darius said quietly. In the light. Like you said. The company, the money, all of it, every number, no more pockets. I'll tell you the size of it, and the name on the building, and the whole boring true thing I kept back. And I'm going to keep telling you everything every day for the rest of... He stopped, not because he was hiding, but because the size of what he wanted to say frightened him with its honesty. He made himself say it anyway. In the light. For the rest of my life, if you'll let me. No secrets. No technically true sentences. No walls. I spent 4 years keeping the lights on, and 2 months keeping a secret. And 5 days learning that the secret cost me everything the lights were for. I'm done. Whatever I am, you get all of it. The money, and the man who can't braid hair, and the tired guy whose eyes don't match his smile. All of it. In the light. I don't care about the company, Emily said, and laughed through the tears. I keep telling you, I never cared about the company. I cared that you went quiet. So here's my deal. And it's the same deal you made me at 2 in the morning. I'm just giving it back to you. No secrets. Even at 2 in the morning. Especially at 2 in the morning. We tell each other the truth even when the truth is, I'm scared. Or I want to run. Or I have a thing in my pocket I don't know how to say. Especially that one. You feel a thing going into your pocket. You take it out, and you put it on the table. That's the whole deal. That's the only deal I'll ever make again. That's the deal, Darius said. I swear it, on her. He nodded at Maya. I swear it on her. Don't swear it on me, Maya objected. Swear it on the cat. The cat's the one who knew. And both adults laughed the broken healing kind of laugh, and Emily turned Maya's drawing around so it faced the right way and pressed it flat on the table like a contract, because that was what it was, the only contract that had ever mattered, drawn in crayon by the one person who'd seen the whole truth before either of the grown-ups could. They got milkshakes. 3 of them. Maya negotiated for extra whipped cream and won the way she always won, and she told Emily a long, complicated story about Keisha and a marker and forgiveness that Emily understood was not really about Keisha or a marker at all. And Darius watched the 2 of them across the table, with his tired eyes finally fully matching his smile, and he thought about the morning 4 years ago in a hospital hallway, when he'd been certain his life was over, that there would only ever be the lights and the duty and the quiet house at 8:30, and he thought about how wrong a person could be about the future, how the worst day could sit 20 miles and a few months away from a diner booth with a crayon drawing in the middle of it. That was nearly the end of it. But not quite. Because healing in real life isn't a single scene in a diner. It's the long, unglamorous repetition the bookstore owner promised. The evidence gathered one ordinary day at a time. The body slowly learning the new thing isn't the old thing. It took months. Emily would tell you that if you asked her later that the diner wasn't the end, it was the start of the real work, the staying. She still ran sometimes in the early weeks. The wall still wanted her. She'd feel the floodwater rise, and she'd go quiet, and Darius would notice and name it gently. You went somewhere, come back when you can, and she'd come back faster each time, the evidence stacking up. He showed her the numbers, all of them, and they were large enough to make her dizzy, and they turned out not to matter at all. Exactly as she'd promised, because the man who showed them to her was still the man who couldn't make exciting food, and acted surprised every time something good happened. The money never became the point. It was just one more true thing on the table in the light. She paid off her own debt. He offered once early to simply erase it, to make the $40,000 disappear with a phone call, and Emily said no, and she said it hard, and Darius understood. Understood that her wound had been about a man controlling her through money, and that letting another man fix her with money, even a kind one, even one she loved, would have put a crack right back in the foundation they were building. So she paid it herself, $150 at a time, every paycheck, and the day she made the last payment, Darius took her and Maya out for milkshakes to celebrate, and he didn't pick up the check for that one. He let her pay. It was the most romantic thing he ever did. She let him hold her hand across the table while she paid off the last of the debt a thief had built in her name, and she understood that this was what equal looked like. This was what partnership looked like. Not him fixing her, not her depending on him, but 2 people choosing each other while each one stood on their own 2 feet. Maya got her wish about the cat eventually. The bookstore owner, it turned out, had been looking for someone to take the menace off her hands for years, and the cat had already cast his vote by sitting on Emily's foot. And so the menace cat came to live in the house that had gone quiet at 8:30 for 4 years, and the house was not quiet anymore. There was a cat knocking things off counters, and a 7-year-old narrating his crimes, and a woman in the kitchen making grilled cheese that was by unanimous family vote, finally exciting. They didn't rush the rest. They'd both learned what rushing cost. But the day came more than a year after a woman wiped lipstick off her own mouth so a stranger would reject her, when Darius Cole got down on one knee in the bookstore, where he'd told her she wasn't stupid for trusting in the aisle, where the menace cat had once sat on her foot with Maya hiding behind a shelf, failing completely to keep the secret. And he asked Emily Carter to fall off the cliff with him for good. And Emily, who had once arranged her entire life so that she would never again have anything to lose, looked at the man and the little girl and the whole terrifying abundance of everything she now had to lose, and understood at last that this was the only thing worth living for. Not safety, never safety. Safety was just a smaller word for alone. The thing worth living for was the cliff. The thing worth living for was having something to lose, and choosing every single morning, even on the mornings the feeling wasn't there to keep it anyway. She didn't dress ugly that day. She didn't have to protect herself from being seen anymore. She wore the navy dress, the one she'd thrown in the trash, and fished back out the flag planted in ground that had stopped being new and started being home. She said yes the way she'd said it the first time in a coffee shop, barely above a whisper, terrified and certain at once. Except this time the fear was just an old habit, with no teeth left in it. And the certainty was the whole truth said out loud in the light in front of a 7-year-old who'd known before either of them did. Maya came out from behind the shelf and announced that she'd seen the whole thing, and it was better than fine. The menace cat summoned from the front counter by the commotion wound once around all 3 sets of ankles and sat down in the middle of them, casting his vote one final time. And that was the truth of it. The whole truth. The thing the year of walls had been hiding from both of them all along. Love was never the absence of fear, and it was never the thing that destroyed you. Love was 2 scared people deciding to stay anyway, telling each other the truth in the light, choosing each other on purpose every single morning, even after every illusion had burned away, and what stood on the other side of the fire when the illusions were gone and only the truth was left was not the ending Emily had dressed in stains to avoid. It was the only beginning that had ever been real.